Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, December 7th, 2020. First off, any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we're looking for a mover and seconder for approval of the agenda. Councillor Cadwell, Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Cadwell, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the agenda for the Committee of the Whole of December 7th, 2020 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we need a mover and seconder for the adoption of the previous minutes. Councillor Frake, Councillor Ritchie. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Ritchie. Resolved that the following advisory board and committee minutes be received. Planning and Development Public Meeting of November 10th, 2020. Grimsby Art Gallery Advisory Board of November 12th, 2020. Grimsby Economic Development Advisory Committee of November 18th, 2020, and Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee of November 19th, 2020. All in favor to approve those? That's carried. And up next, we have our delegation, Gordana Mosier, Canadian Hard of Hearing Association, read the access masks. She's not here. All right, so these are the access masks. Gordana is not here yet, so we will move on with our agenda, and hopefully she will be here momentarily. So up next, we have the consent agenda. And need a mover and seconder for the consent agenda. Councillor Vane, Councillor Ritchie.
I'd like to lift some items, Mayor, if that's possible.
Yes, Councillor Bothwell, what items would you like to lift?
Appendix A, so the Rqms review, so that would be, sorry, I'm gonna go back up here. GPW 20-44, so 6.3B. 6.3E, report DPW 2047 tree planting, and the planning and development consent 6.4A. Sorry, and also 6.2B, DRS 20-13, LED lighting retrofit for the Peach King Center.
Great. Any other councillors want to lift anything? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Ritchie. Resolved that the Committee of the Whole hereby approves the following items and that various consent items be approved on the recommendation as contained therein. DRS 20-11, DPW 20-43, DPW 20-45, DPW 20-46, and DPW 20-48. All in favor? That's carried. Now our first lifted item is report DRS 20-13, the LED lighting retrofit for the Peach King Center. Yes, our delegation's here now, so we'll talk about the lifted items after our delegation. Welcome, Gordana.
Hello.
How are you? I've got your mask, all access mask. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. That's great to see. So I can get started, or?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Welcome,
wonderful.
and you're ready to go.
My apologies. I feel like in this new Zoom world, we've been zoomed out like crazy. I've just had like 4 today with work, but this is a special one I wanted tonight. So hello, everyone. My name is Gordana Mosier, and a longtime Grimsby resident and very strong advocate in the accessibility community, obviously supporting my community, but across Canada as well. I have an incredible role on my day-to-day job with the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association. I'm the manager of accessibility projects and communications with the organization, which is located nationally in Ottawa, but I have the privilege of working from my home in Grimsby, so I feel I can share the news from my hometown here. The Canadian Hard of Hearing Association is a leading consumer advocacy organization that represents the needs of 4 million Canadians that are impacted by hearing loss. We work cooperatively with professionals, service providers, and government agencies to provide life-enhancing information, support, and advocacy to ensure people with hearing loss can overcome any barriers in all aspects of their lives. We know now, obviously, for the past several months, how difficult and overwhelming it has been with the pandemic, the uncertain times that has come upon us over these past several months, that our own day-to-day activities have changed, and we've learned all how to adapt and to continue to evolve in all of our communities. This pandemic has presented additional barriers to equitable communication barriers for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. And the problem is with so many things regarding communication is the use of the standard masks that all of us have been wearing to protect ourselves during COVID, and all of our locations regarding we're going to retail or visiting our family, etc. The standard mask has become an additional barrier for individuals with a hearing loss. And I'm sure most of us have experienced that from our day-to-day activities, wondering what the person has said, or the muffled sounds, etc. I've noticed a lot of people in my community pulling down their masks to say, "What did you say? I couldn't quite hear that." So with the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association, we partnered with the Como Foundation and their Access Mask, which is called My Access Mask, which in part has been gone through to the whole process of making sure that they are safe, and they had testing involved regarding the government of Canada. It's gone through a federal level as well to ensure that the masks meet the PPE standards, and approval from the government of Ontario that has received approval, and with the federal government, it's going through that place as well. The effort is to expand the reach, to remove the barriers to accessible communication, and to provide more education on hearing loss prevention and management. And from a CHA perspective, is to increase programs and services in collaboration with our network partners and with all levels of government. And I think it's important from my perspective as a Grimsby resident to provide this information, ensure that my level of government, my community, is aware of the barriers that are faced with individuals with hearing loss, whether they're your family member or members of our community, that we do provide them some resources that is available for them. So that, in fact, is the Access Mask. So I did want to present this to my town and to everyone here on council and mayor to understand the importance of this, that this is not going away, that communication barriers are ongoing, and with this pandemic, these additional barriers are really causing a huge challenge with the community. And again, I want to really emphasize the fact that these masks and the communication masks that do have the clear lens, it's not made just for deaf or hard of hearing people. It is made for all of us to use. It will help all of us understand what barriers are faced. But at the end of the day too, we are so used to not wearing a mask and seeing our expressions. I know for myself, We do speak and use our facial expressions and gestures on our face to communicate, whether it's a feeling or expression of understanding. We do have that on our faces. So with that, we did launch the wonderful, hopefully the video was shown, in regards to Share Your Smile campaign. We wanted to enlighten the fact that sharing your smile is across the board. It's accessible for all of us. And through these masks and with the clear lens mask, we hope that everyone can share their smile and bring awareness of accessibility, that it's important in every community across Canada. So thank you very much for this time. I really appreciate it. And I can't emphasize this in the number of support I have received in my community, just wearing this masks in our retail outlets, and when we did have a chance to go to more of our restaurants in our community too. The feedback has been incredible, and it's more than, wow, that's cute, or what's that all about? It engages the conversation and engages the part that we all need to be accessible in whatever format that can be. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Gordana, and it really is something that adds accessibility in a time when it's greatly needed. Questions from Council? Councillor Vardy?
Thank you, Gordana, for your presentation. And let me say, I think those masks are just brilliant. Not just to help those who are hard of hearing, but we're so disconnected from each other when we have this mask. Now people can see that you're smiling, and you get the full benefit of the kind of communication, and there's less of a barrier now between you and other people. One thing I wanted to ask you is, because I've noticed some people with hearing aids have a problem hooking the masks over their ears. And have you found anything that might be of assistance to those people?
Thank you. Great question. I even found it with myself that as we're wearing, and sometimes wearing those earbuds in our ear and wearing the mask sometimes too, you end up flicking things off. But there are ways to tie it on the back of your head too that is more accommodating, not only from a hearing aid perspective, but also from a comfort level as well. Sometimes people do find it very difficult and challenging to wear it right behind the ears, but there are alternatives to tie behind your back, or there's extenders as well that do help as well.
Thank you. Councillor Frake?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gordana, great presentation. Thank you very much. A very simple idea, but a very effective one, obviously. I mean, I was out shopping today, and I mean, people come up and, so do you know who I am? And they have the hat on and they have the regular mask on, and most of the times all you're seeing are their eyes, and you don't know who they are. So this particular mask will probably help in that regard. So probably start being able to recognize people. The other thing is, I guess, part of comprehension and part of hearing or understanding people when they're talking is looking at their facial expressions, as you say, or reading their lips, which we can't do with the mask that most of us wear today. So certainly that would, I would think, solve that issue or that problem. Would help a lot. So I commend you on coming forward tonight, and being in Grimsby. It's great. Nice to know you were part of the Grimsby community, and thank you for the presentation. A great idea. By the way, where do we get these masks?
We do have them on chha.ca, the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association's website, with a link that has it with our partner Access Mask, My Access Mask. We launched it with them back in September 28th, official launch. And CHA will also have their own e-commerce platform as well, where you can purchase. And like I said, as far as regards Councillor Fink, what you said about lip reading, a lot of individuals with a hearing loss do a lot of lip reading, and that does give the guidance to with having that clear lens too. And expressions are huge. As we all know, when we speak, we don't speak in monotone. We do express ourselves on our face.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you to Gordana. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm one of those people that is hard of hearing. I wear 2 hearing aids. I think partly because of 36 years in the fire service, a lot of noise, a lot of action. But anyways, I want to thank you for bringing this to the forefront because it is an issue, and there's a lot of challenges to it, as Councillor Vardy mentioned about hearing aids. I mean, when I take a mask off, it's like I'm really very, very slowly and trying to take it off, because it catches your hearing aids, and next thing you know, you're trying to grab it before it hits the ground, whatever. But also, what I do find around town, even outside of Grimsby, because of not the language barriers, but just trying to understand what people are saying. A lot of people are going, pardon, and in overall, in general, in my experiences, people are very, they're very compassionate. You don't get, I don't know if maybe you've heard other experiences, maybe you can speak to that a little bit, but overall, people are very courteous. There's a lot of courtesy to it, and again, compassion too. So with regards to another type of mask, and I'm gonna order a couple of those from you too. I wear a neck mask, a cloth neck mask I find you just pull it up cover your nose, and there's no problems with the hearing aids then. But anyways, I just want to, those are just some of my experiences, and I want to thank you very much. And I don't know if you had any other comments to add to what I just brought up. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Definitely, I agree with you in regards to patients in all of our communities. I think over the past 8 months right now, we've all been learning on how to live through this COVID and how to adhere to all the rules and regulations and just best practices as we're learning it on how to be safe and protect each other. So I do find that people are more patient, and maybe not now through the holiday rush, but overall people are patient in regards to helping each other out. And if you don't hear them properly, that they do ask questions again. And those are one of the things that I do emphasize in regards to anyone with a hearing loss or not, to be patient in regards to communication tips, to repeat themselves and maybe ask it in a different way though too. And the standard masks that cover your mouth make it so much more challenging, and makes that a huge barrier to communication barrier. If we don't have communication between us, all of us, many people do feel isolated as well, and this pandemic has already caused a lot of isolation with all of our members of our community, especially our older generation as well, that are feeling very isolated. So if this mask is a bit of a help, and I truly do believe in it, that's a huge overcoming from a barrier perspective.
Great. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much again, Gordana, for your presentation. And I will read the resolution. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing more of those masks around town. So,
great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
have a good evening. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frick. Resolved that the delegation from Gordana Mosher Canadian Hard of Hearing Association be received. All in favor? That's carried. And up next, we have report DRS 20-13, the LED lighting retrofit. Sarah Sweeney, Councillor Bothwell, did you have a question about that?
Yeah, I thank you, Mayor, through you. She doesn't need to go through the whole report. It's well done. I just had a quick question about whether the award to for the retrofit project for the LED replacement lighting includes the installation costs and the disposal of the old fluorescent bulbs, because I think they need to be treated as hazardous waste. So I just wondered if that contract included installation and disposal.
Good evening, and through you, Mr. Mayor, it definitely includes the installation. I will have to double check on the disposal. I don't have that right in front of me. I believe it does, but I do need to verify that.
Okay, that's appreciated, because I suspect there's going to be a huge volume of old bulbs that have to be disposed of, and sometimes if you have to pay for that, that can be quite expensive. So I'd appreciate if you can just let us know by email or whatever if that's taken care of.
I'm happy to do that for sure.
Thank you. Councillor Bain?
Just for information purposes, Sarah Sweeney, you could just have one of your parks people take the bulbs up to the dump. They take all the hazardous bulbs there, no charge.
Will they take how many hundreds of them, Sarah?
Maybe we'll take them 5 at a time. No, I'm kidding. If for any reason it is not included, we'll make sure we do it in the most economical means we can, but I will follow up. I want to make sure I get you the right information. So I will follow up on that one. Thank you.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. Through you to Director Sweeney. Wow, time goes by fast because what I remember, it was 2011, the summer of 2011, the lights were all changed in the east pad and the west pad. And yeah, so that's, again, I just did a little research too, and I just went for information purposes. Apparently the lights, the standard amount of time for those types of lights is 6 to 7 years. But the ballasts are only warranted, guaranteed. The warranty on the ballasts on the lights is only 5 years. So I'm glad, Sarah, this has been brought up, and we're doing this now because it's definitely, like I say, it's been since summer of 2011. So just the 13,166, is that the rebate, Sarah, that we will be attaining?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. That is the incentive payback that we're eligible for. So $13,000. And as it was mentioned in the report, we have registered for that. That was due last week. We were able to register without having to make final commitment. So we were excited to get that in time and capture that savings. So it's quite an exciting project for us to capture the savings through the incentive, but also the net savings over operational costs, because everything we can do to keep our operational costs down benefit all of our community groups, which they'll also be quite happy about.
Thank you, Sarah. If I may, just one more question, Mr. Mayor. So was there a lighting audit study done to realize that we have to get this done? That's all I'm asking, Sarah. Thank you.
Sure. Through you again, Mr. Mayor. So the origin of this is knowing that we have fluorescent type lighting throughout the building. It's much more costly to operate. And also being aware of these incentive programs, that's really what kind of started this down the road, was we knew that through the LED program, we could capture so much savings through the operations. So that's sort of what, then as I said, the incentive was a really good opportunity to look at that further and what those opportunities were.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think with the LED bulbs, and maybe you can help me on this, they do last longer as well. And they're certainly much more cost effective, and there's not the ballasts that have hazardous materials.
That is correct. They definitely last longer. And as you can see in the report, the savings on energy is really, it was much higher than we even anticipated it to be quite honest with you. It's really quite incredible what a difference that makes. So certainly going forward, it's something we'll be looking at in other facilities as well. We started in this facility because it's the biggest impact. It's our biggest energy user by quite a bit. But start to look at other locations as well, parking lots, because we do expect the incentive programs to continue in other forms or fashion. So we'll be paying close attention to that and capturing more on that opportunity, which will be good news for all of us.
Excellent. Councillor Sharp.
Thanks, Mayor Jordan. To Director Sweeney, how much is the energy savings per year? Do we know?
I do have it in the report. 1 second. So currently our existing demand is, one second, where is it? The savings could be 220 kilowatts, which could equate to almost $35,000. The one thing with it, of course, is this is based upon the same consumption we're using. So it is consumption based, but it's quite considerable. Right now we're at our existing consumption is 484. So I'm just reading this really quickly. And then, yeah, we would go down to the 221. So it's a significant savings.
Is that just consumed by lights, or is that our total?
That's what they equated to for lights.
Do you know, is there a dollar value for our lighting cost? Can you?
The estimated energy savings, and these companies, this is what their profession is, so they do this continuously. They have estimated it could save us $40,000 annually.
Yeah, but what's our total cost annually?
Our total cost,
You've got 78,000
Yep.
in the report, Sarah.
yeah, it's 78,000 is annually, and obviously that's an estimate year to year. And then it would save $40,000. So $35,000 is, sorry, I'm trying to read this. Yeah, so it was 78 and then we would save 40. So that, I mean, that's double pretty much, right? If you want to round it simply.
Yeah.
Half,
Okay.
I would say.
Okay, that's great news. And
And
the
we'll
total
watch it, and we look forward to following it ourselves and tracking it, and we can certainly give some further feedback onto that. If we're then looking at other facilities as well, we can report back on that and just give some actual data as we go along.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, Your Worship. I thought I'd weigh in and help you out there, Sarah, because we're talking about saving energy, but we're also saving bulb replacement and ballast replacements over the years. How many bulbs, fluorescent tubes do you change? These LEDs they're maintenance free. You just don't have to do anything after you install them. They just work every day. I've used them now for 3 years at our restaurant. They're just fabulous. So yeah, you're not just saving energy, you're saving time to change bulbs, to change ballasts. It's a win-win situation. Good work on that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great, seeing no further questions. Thank you very much for your report, Sarah. And I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that report DRS 20-13 dated December 7th, 2020 be received, and that staff be authorized to proceed with the LED lighting retrofit project for the Grimsby Peach King Centre at a cost of $69,754.16, with an eligible incentive payback of $13,166.75. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have report DRS 20-12 Whitaker Park Building. Who's going to speak on that? Sarah. Sarah, that's you again. Welcome again.
Thank you. So I'll just go over some of the quick highlights, and then I'm sure answer any questions as well. So this building has been something we've been looking at for quite a while. Of course, its original intention was never to be used as a community facility. However, when it was no longer needed by the Niagara region, they sort of put it up for us to use if we wanted to, and it did eventually get some community use and has had community use since 2002 by our Grimsby Conservation Club. And we're at a point now where the building is quite old. It really needs quite a lot of work, as well as the park surrounding that area needs quite a bit of work as well. And that's something I think we've talked about as certainly as staff and even as council, looking at some of the shoreline protection work that's needed in that area as well. And so to really go forward properly, we want to make sure that we have a good plan in place for that whole park area. After discussing this with the Conservation Club group, so they had sort of, the Conservation Club group had sort of stopped meeting for a little while and weren't terribly active. They do have a few people that are trying to pick that up and start running with it again, which is exciting, and we look forward to working with them. And there is also an independent art group in there as well that teaches art classes for the community. So that's who's currently using the space. They haven't really been in there since COVID, very much at all. But we're at a point where we would need to invest quite a bit into that facility if we were to continue to use it as it's being used for. After our conversations with these groups and also just looking at some of the other facilities inventory, We don't think it's the best investment to make, to invest in this as a community facility. It's not really what it was intended for. And we think we can accommodate them very well in other facilities. Actually quite excited to work with them in other facilities where they can spend a little bit less time worrying about how they keep the lights on and hopefully a little bit more time diving into some of their community use. And it is our recommendation as a staff team that we would remove the building and turn it into parkland. It is a beautiful spot. Waterfront, of course, is of high demand. Certainly something we saw in the master plan was capturing waterfront parkland as much as we could. And because of its proximity to Whitaker Park, as it stands right now, right beside it, and also the proximity to the Elizabeth Street Pump House and the lands there, it's a really great spot to add some more park opportunities and also create that path. So it is important to know that between those two houses, we do have that piece of land as well. So extending the trail all along there will really create a beautiful spot. That park down there gets very well used down at the pier as well. The parking lot sometimes is full. So being able to add more space and more opportunity to that immediate area, I think will benefit all of the residents that go there that live in that immediate area, but also the people that come from all over the community to enjoy that space. So this is an important part for us just to know how to proceed in terms of how we'll proceed with the shoreline protection, whether we go the full length across and whether we work on that trail development as well. The open water tanks, as was noted in this as well, is something we definitely want to fill in soon. They are quite old. The fencing around is getting quite old. So we know we have to do something. And we just want to make sure that we're maximizing every dollar we spend into this area in the right way. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much for your report. Sarah, any questions from council? Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Sarah. Great report, and often wondered what we'd do with that building. And parkland's a great idea. There's quite a drop there from the edge of the land to the shore, and so there'd be a lot of work involved, I would think, in trying to develop that into a parkland. Would we be putting up fencing or to protect our residents from any accidents? Are we also looking at connecting to that trail that goes to the pump house? There's a small trail there where there's a couple of residential units in between that building and the pump house. Are we looking at that too? And of course, there is a lot of erosion that's been ongoing for probably as long as that building's been there. There's been just a ton of erosion. I've taken pictures of it at one point. In fact, on my original tour with our CAO, we went and took a trip over there so I could show them what the erosion is like there. So there is some treacherous parts to it. So I would hope we would want to address all that in this whole process. If you've got some comments, that would be great.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it is quite a steep cliff, particularly in that unprotected area. So behind the building and those two residences. It's also steep on the other side, and there's stairs down to the beach. There's actually quite a nice beach that's formed there as well that the communities come to enjoy. The idea would be to connect to that trail that you're referring to and go right across the back. And that is on the report on page 3. You can see is where we showed that dotted line for the potential of the trail. Probably would need to do fencing. Certainly once the shoreline protection is in there, as you said, just from a safety perspective for the community because of the steepness of it, and naturalize that area sort of immediately facing, like right connected to the water as well. So yes, I would think we would fence that area. We fenced to the other side that is the existing park as well for the same reasons, because it is quite a steep cliff. Just keeps people away from it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you to Sarah. I'm glad we're hanging on to that property. I know in the past, there were some council members in the past that thought this would be a great piece of property to try to sell, but I'm really glad to see the report. And I did have some ties with the Conservation Club now, but we have disbanded a little while ago, and the lady that runs the art classes there now, as Sarah mentioned, she's the person of contact that's using the building. So Yeah, and just reading the recommendation, the range of 150,000 to 200,000. I think if we get under that, Sarah, I know the building very well. The concrete that is underneath that building, I'll use one word, it's massive. That's because it was built to last. It was the old water treatment plant. It was part of it. It was built to last forever, I think, anyways. But what I was wondering, as we move forward with the plans here, could there be any funding that we could be looking for to help from a demolition standpoint, Sarah? Because again, I think it's going to be a lot more, because that is one solid building. Yeah, if you think there might be something available under any types of grants or anything? Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. You're right, Councillor Cadwell. The thing is built like a bomb shelter. I've always said if there's somewhere you would want to go, that might be it. So it will be a costly removal. We did have a couple staff weigh in on it, and they felt comfortable with its estimate, but it is an estimate, of course, at this point in time. I do think there could be some possibility of seeking grant funds. Certainly, we'll keep our eyes open for everything. Truthfully, it may be easier to get funding for the shoreline protection than it would for the removal of the existing buildings. We would be looking at both pieces ongoing, as well as any other park development piece as well.
Thank you, Sarah. I just want one last comment, Mr. Mayor. I spoke with Frank England this afternoon, and he lives right across the road. And he was telling me that behind the building there, he's been there a long time. And he figures that the amount of land that's been lost, it's close to about 25 feet over the years. But anyways, that's just for information. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Frick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Sarah. How are you doing?
Hello. Well, you?
Good. Thank you for the report. It was kind of, the property was kind of in hiding down there. Nobody was really recognizing it was still there. But anyways, the cost you're talking about in your report, none of these costs are actually in our budget this year, right?
The cost to remove, all I have in the budget this year is $30,000. So I would be carrying that forward. The rest we will have to add in. Yes.
And we're talking 100. Well, I guess we have to go through next year's budget before we make any decisions on this, anyways. And of course, there's always a possibility of grants, and those grants could be used in other places as well, depending on how we prioritize those grants. But for the time being, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to spend the least amount of money as possible and still get income from the property until we know exactly what we want to do with it and we have the money to do it. So a $3,000 to $12,000, I think, is what you noted in your report that would cost to make the least to the most renovations to keep it operative. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the cost is very minimal to use that building right now. That said, it needs to be very short term because the building needs a lot of work, and we really want to make sure that it's safe and just not investing in it in other ways. So we could do that in the short term. We definitely can. This doesn't have to happen immediately, so it can be part of the budget deliberations and wait. I think what's key is at least acknowledging what our long-term vision is. So as we're looking at these things for shoreline protection and all of these pieces, that we have that eventual goal of where we're going to go. So we could operate it for a short time as it is. Again, I just don't really want to do that for too long. Those tanks really do need to be filled in. The fencing needs to be addressed. So some of these things need to be done fairly soon, especially that shoreline work as well. So we could find a bit of a mix to make it work.
So when you say soon, what's the time frame when you say soon? It's a very ominous four-letter word, soon.
I guess on that piece, it would have to go to the budget, right? So in fairness, it would be put forward as a 2021 item, and we would look at where we think we can fit it in. There might be funds we can use in other pockets that we have to decide where that priority is. It doesn't have to be 2021. If the work is not done 2021, we'll probably still look at doing something with those exterior tanks, though, at minimum, because I would like to do something with those.
So in the meantime, we're probably best just to struggle along until the budget comes due, our budget proceedings, and then get into a more wholesome, fulsome discussion as to what's best to do with this particular property. Is that the best suggestion, you think?
Yeah, so in order to move forward with the plans for the shoreline protection in particular, it's really important that we decide what we intend to do with this space. Because depending on what you would want to do with it long-term, it would affect how you would protect that shoreline behind it, right? Including that spot between residents. So it doesn't all have to happen right at once, but at least having that idea of, do we agree with this idea that we would go forward with converting it into parkland and maintain that trail? It doesn't all have to happen in 2021, but I do think we have to at least have that vision.
So we can easily break this into two different pieces: the shoreline protection, which is really important, obviously, and the facility and the property it sits on is two different discussions then.
It's two different discussions in some ways, and yet if you were to decide to just sell the entire property, that might affect how you would handle shoreline protection in that back corner, right?
Would we pass that responsibility on to the next owner if we sold it, for example? Is that what you're saying?
It is something that could certainly get discussed. I mean, is an option. If we decided not to use that space or do something different with it, then that would impact what you would intend to do.
Okay. Anyways, I mean, I'm a little bit ahead of myself and ahead of everything here, but anyway, I look forward to a more fulsome discussion when we come to budget time. Thanks, Sarah. Great report. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It'll be a beautiful spot as we continue to develop it.
Councillor Barty.
Great. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for your report. In terms of longer term vision, I definitely like what you've put out there. I think it would be good if you could break it down into, there might be, as Councillor Frake said, some immediate steps that need to be taken care of, shoreline protection and possibly filling the tanks. And if you could kind of cost out those steps that we could do perhaps over a number of years, that would be good. But there was one thing in the report that I found a little bit disconcerting. And she smiles. And it's where you said it was a groin. You were talking about a groin. I don't really know what a groin is, but you said if we had this groin, we might not need the pier. I personally think we need the pier. The pier is a great addition to Grimsby, and I wouldn't want to lose the pier. I know we talked about restoring it, and I think we were using gas tax funds to do that. There's so many lovely things that we could do with the pier by putting benches out there and maybe gazebos. I mean, it's almost like a little parkette in itself, and people could go fishing off of it. And so I just don't want, I don't want the groin to be a trade-off for the pier, whatever a groin is. Maybe you can tell me.
Through you, thanks, Councillor Vardy, and thank you for that feedback. That's great. And certainly we would be bringing forward all of those pieces in more detail. The groin is, if you have the report in front of you, for anybody who has the report, sorry, it's on. So if you look on page 5 of the report, you can see in the illustration, it shows what the groin is. And basically, it's to protect the waterfront. So it's not, the groin is like what you see in the West End Waterfront Park, where it's the rock that sticks out into the water that protects the beaches. And I'm sure I'm butchering this description compared to the people that know it better, but that's what it would be. And one of the discussions was, could we design it in a way that would offer some of the same opportunities that the pier would, given the proximity of it? So the purpose of the groin would be to protect the beach, so you would have to build it there, but there might be some similarities in use that we could capture that would be beneficial. It was just an idea thrown out there, just looking at how do we manage these costs. It would just be one option of many we would put forward, but we did want to mention it as an idea that came up among our staff team that we thought was worth at least considering.
Well, if I could just add through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it's been said that it's quite steep, that area right now, and the pier is very easily accessible. We wouldn't have to make steps or anything like that. So, I just want to still keep making the case for the the pier, because it's going to be it might be hard to access the waterfront at that area, whereas we have excellent access, plus complementary facilities with the pump house. And I mean, that's such a lovely area down there, and plenty of parking, and just that's where my thoughts lie.
Sure, great point. With the pier, if we were to rebuild it in its location, we do know that we would have to make it higher than it is. On a really wavy day, the whole thing can be underwater. So all of that would be looked at too, just so you know, all of those heights and access points as well. But certainly all of those pieces can be discussed further as we look more specifically as what we do with the park.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I sort of echo Councillor Vardy's thoughts on this, in that I too think that we have a really, really neat gem with the pier, a historical aspect to it too, with its tying into the 40 there and the history of the area. So I think you'd mentioned at Rec Services too that, you know, we're not going to be able to put another pier anywhere else along there. It's very hard with Fisheries and Oceans to get approvals to build those type of structures, and rebuilding and on the existing frame that we've got is something that we can do there. So I really as well feel that, as Councillor Vardy said, it's such a community benefit that we don't want to lose. I don't want to see giving up for that. And the other concern I have with comparing a groin to the pier, I really can't compare it, because a groin cannot safely be used or have people on it. Like the groins here that we have out at Lake House and at the end of Hunter Road in Place Polonaise are new groins there. People are not supposed to be walking on them and fishing, which they're doing. It's not safe. So a groin as constructed as a revetment area would not be something, I don't think, that would meet AODA for one, and would not be safe, and would probably be a liability to the town. So I don't see that as being a focal point that could be very useful, considering, like as Councillor Vardy said, the access to it, etc. And I think the preference there is to look at focusing our money, our grants, and our ability on the pier. Shoreline revetment, the costs are extremely high in there. We know that. I think before we move forward with this, I think we really need to look at what types of grants, or what other type of climate resilience and all of the other packages that are out there that other municipalities are taking advantage of for this type of erosion. There's money out there. We just have to make our effort to get this, get a package out there to get a grant for it, and get some type of support. And so based on all of that, and I don't think we have to act on it immediately. As Councillor Frakes said, there is a budget implication here as well. So the report is recommending three things: that we receive it, that the building be scheduled for demolition with the intention of creating the parkland, and 3, that staff advance plans to protect the shoreline in this area, which is revetment, and create an improved walking path. So I don't think we can, in my mind, I'm not prepared to move forward with those recommendations today, because I think we need to do more research on where we can find money to fund this, and as well look at the focus of the pier. So I'm wondering if we can just receive this report, and as Councillor Frakes said, let's revisit it when we get to budget discussions to see whether there's you've had an ability to find other avenues for funding sources for the revetment, et cetera, and maybe refine this a little bit as to what the financial impacts are going to be of it. So I'd like to see us just receive the report today and not pick one of the recommendations that are in it, if that's possible.
So Councillor Bothwell, receive rather than defer it to budget, or?
Yeah, defer to, I don't know. What do you think is the best, Sarah? We could defer the whole report to budget, but are you going to be preparing something different that you're going to bring to budget?
So if I'm following correctly, it's not so much that there is a support for the plan of action being suggested here. It's more of the timing and the budget. Is that fair, Councillor Bothwell?
Yeah.
Okay. So certainly we can come back. All of those pieces would have to come in the budget. I think it's just important that we get agreement from council that this is at least the action that you would like to take. It would be helpful to have that. And if we can work on the timing and the budget ongoing, certainly it has to come forward to in the budget process. None of these pieces could be done without budget approval, but just at least that acknowledgement that this is the plan we need to go, or we're looking to go forward with, and the plan is to make it parkland so we can keep whittling away at these cost estimates. I think that was the key out of this, was making sure that there's agreement from council that this is the way that we intend to proceed.
So I appreciate that. And I totally agree that, yes, we want to look at this as parkland, but I also don't want to do it, as Councillor Vardy said, as at the expense of the pier, and that we put our money and our ducks into this one and then say that we don't have money for the pier. So I'm a little worried about the way the report is written. If we acknowledge that, yes, we want to make it parkland and advance what's in the report, we're basically agreeing to prioritizing the groin area versus the pier area. And I'm not supportive of that at this point.
And I definitely hear that. And I didn't mean to send that through in a way as that was definitely the plan. We were just trying to look at an option. So hearing the comments from council this evening is something we could certainly build into the plans, and we could come back with a couple of options. I would look at a few different ways that we could approach it and then pick the best one and cost them out appropriately. I think that would be the best way to do, and go into a little bit more of a detailed plan of some of the different options and timing as well as to what might exist. And then also look further into the grant opportunities as well, knowing that we have a general vision of how we foresee using that land going forward.
So through you, Mayor Jordan, if there's a way then to put a motion forward to refer to budget, and then that would allow Sarah to come back with that different, those kinds of concepts and visions. So that Absolutely. Would be my suggestion. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, I'm quite happy to have Sarah move forward that way, because certainly we know what Burlington at Spencer Smith Park has done with their pier, and that was an old pier that was there, and I know they totally redid it, but we certainly can have a vision like that, in my opinion. So, and just another thing about the existing building, is there any way to, rather than remove all that cement, is it to make some type of cement, whether it be area for picnic tables or something like that, that may be a way to save money in the removal cost of something that's so solidly there. So just a thought. So we can continue the discussion. Sorry for interrupting. Councillor Cadwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. And I just thought, I see Brandon is here, and maybe with the permission of council, if Brandon could just give us a Coles Notes version, just about groins for the benefit of everybody in council. If that's something we could do. Thank you.
Sure. Brandon, if you're up for it, I'm happy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think Sarah did a pretty good job of explaining what a groin is. So essentially, it's a breakwater. So it's a revetment structure that's made out of armor stone. It's all pieced together like a big puzzle piece. It sticks out in the water like a finger or a thumb, essentially, and protects the beach area from future erosion. With the groin installation, there will be some installation of stone casting as well, which acts as a break again to help the wave actions not be so disruptive behind it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thank you, Brandon. I'll just read what we have here, what the clerks prepare. Resolve that.
Mr. Mayor, sorry,
yes?
I want to speak.
All right.
I wanted to speak to it, sorry.
All right, Councillor Vane, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm with Director Sweeney, having discussed this with her at length over the years, the importance, and please disagree, Sarah, if you wish, the importance of the break walls are extremely important. I understand the importance of the pier too. We were looking at one point in using gas tax money or other money for that pier, but if we don't start stopping the erosion, then why waste the money on a pier that we're not going to be able to access because there won't be any land to get to it? we have to take the erosion very, very seriously. And I do consider that a priority as much as I want the pier back, because I know that many people in my ward want it back. So, and in the town as a whole, but I do think we need to give some serious consideration. You know, to sit here and just do what looks pretty is not the right thing to do. The break walls are very important. Thank you.
I'll read the resolution. Resolved that report DRS 20-12 dated December 9th, 2020, or December 7th, 2020 be received, and that the item regarding Whitaker Park building be referred to the 2021 budget process. Councillor Bothwell, are you okay with that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. That's perfect.
All right, so I'll have you as the mover.
Are
And
we going to read the original motion first? Sorry, are we going to read the original motion first, Mr. Mayor?
She's put through an amendment.
We don't have a mover and seconder, so. Okay. All right, so we need a mover and seconder for the original motion. Councillor Ritchie. And Councillor Bain. All right, so I'll read the original motion. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Bain. Resolved that report DRS 20-12 dated December 7th, 2020 be received, and that the Whitaker Park Conservation Clubhouse at 6 Lakeside Drive be scheduled for demolition with the intention of creating additional parkland at this site, and that staff advance plans to protect the shoreline in this area and create an improved walking path between Whitaker Park and the Elizabeth Street Pump House.
We have a recorded vote on that one?
Recorded vote.
Mayor,
Yes?
if I could just have the opportunity to speak, if I may.
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if you look at page 7 of 8 of the report, Sarah and her team and Public Works team considered the other options. So in the recommendation, we're just looking for direction, a long-term direction, because it wouldn't all just be discussed in the 2021 budget. It would be probably a multi-year, long-term budget feasibility in the future. But we're just looking at staff as a direction that those other options are not where council wants to go, but wants to go for a long-term vision of making this parkland. And that's why we're asking for this recommendation, just so we could start to think about not just 2021, but maybe the next 5 years, looking at all sorts of grants, but that the direction we're going is something that you want to provide us the way, more than we're making a commitment in the budgets. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I understand that we can move this process to the 2021 and then revisit moving it into a multi-year project at a later date. So.
Recorded vote, Councillor. Oh, this Councillor Ritchie.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we're talking about the original motion, but I'm okay to take the recommendation number 2 and not to schedule it for demolition, but to push it forward to the 2021 budget. That would allow this report to be received, that the demolition and the intention of creating additional parkland at the site be pushed to the 2021 budget. And part 3, it just says that staff advance plans to protect the shoreline in this area and create an improved walkway path. So there's no cost at that right now. They're just advancing the plans to do that. So if we wanted to change number 2 to refer to the 2021 budget and proceed like that, I'm okay to make that amendment.
Councillor Bain, are you all right with that?
Yes, that'll be fine. Thank you.
And then I think that that accomplishes what the other councilors were talking about as well. So there's no cost that'll allow the plans to come forward from Director Sweeney, and it also gives the direction where we want to head.
I'll read the amended resolution. Resolved that report DRS 20-12 dated December 7th, 2020 be received, and that the Whitaker Park Building Conservation Clubhouse at 6 Lakeside, it still has the scheduled for demolition in here. I thought that was going to be lifted. Yeah, I don't understand. Okay. Okay, I'll read it again. Resolved that report DRS 20-12 dated December 7th, 2020 be received, and that the Whitaker Park Building Conservation Clubhouse at 6 Lakeside Drive be scheduled for demolition with the intention of creating additional parkland at this site, be referred to the 2021 budget process, and that staff advance plans to protect the shoreline in this area and create an improved walking path between Whitaker Park and the Elizabeth Street Pump House. So it's a recorded vote.
Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall,
Yes.
Councillor Frake,
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell,
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie,
Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
Yes.
Councillor Vane,
Yes.
Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan.
Yes.
That's carried.
Up next, we have report DPW 20-44, the Rqms infrastructure review. Brandon, welcome to speak on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there was particular questions from Councillor Bothwell. I can talk about the report, but if there's specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Mayor, if you're okay.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Bothwell.
Sorry about that. I appreciate all the work that you went into all of these significant reports. Okay, they're very detailed. There's been a lot of attention to ensuring compliance and ensuring the town is doing what is right and what is safe. And I really appreciate all the work that your team, Thomas Hodgson, yourself, and all your members are doing to ensure that we're compliant and meeting our requirements. Just some simple little questions. On page 3, I guess you talk about the stormwater ponds and maintenance and inspection of them. And I just wondered if that would cover something like the Lampman Pond that we've just had some concerns from residents with respect to the smells and discharge that in that pond. Is that one of them that would be covered under that type of inspection? That's one question.
Sorry, I can answer that question then.
Yeah.
So sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, we do complete annual inspections of our all of our stormwater management facilities and our storm scepters. So they're actually underground tanks that do cleaning of the stormwater runoff as well. So as part of those inspections, we are required to meet our MOE obligations in terms of our certificate of approvals. They establish how often we have to inspect them and what we look for, and we do inspect them on an annual basis. Lampman Drive Pond is one of those ponds that have to be inspected on an annual basis.
And you're keeping a close eye on that one for us, right?
Yes.
Thank you. The other just two more questions. You mentioned the winter maintenance program and that unmaintained pathways don't really get any winter maintenance. And I know that the waterfront trail is one of those that is marked as no winter maintenance. And I know it falls under Parks, Rec, and Culture, basically. I just wondered if there was any way to look at it. I've had a few questions from the community because of COVID, and people are relying more and more on getting outdoors and nature and walking. And they've found the waterfront trail just an excellent way to get out and get that relief that they need with nature. If there was any way just to look at what would be involved in maintaining and that section for this winter. I don't know if there's a way to bring something forward or back to us just for information purposes. I just want to leave that out there because people just wonder if there's any way that we can look at it. And I know there's costs involved in time and people, so I can put a motion, but it's just more an information of what's involved on that.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, it is an item that, when we originally were in the development process for the subdivision in the area that we, was always in the back of our mind. If we're putting a path right next to the lakefront in the winter, obviously the winds kick up and the ice and water can splash over the pathways, become very slippery and icy, and it becomes a really a big liability issue. So that's why we have posted them as not unmaintained. In terms of the actual maintenance of it, could we do it? I suppose anything's possible, but again, it's taking a very difficult, environmentally difficult situation in terms of ice buildup and water and trying to keep them clean and fresh. So and prevent the ice formation. So is it something that could be done? Yes. Is it wise or cost effective? I'm not sure. So I would have to look at that in more detail.
Thank you. And just the quick last question, the road guardrails and guide rails, was there work supposed to be done on Wolverton at Kemp on the guardrails there? Was that, I didn't see that there was any action items, and I just wondered where we are with that one.
Sorry, I'm through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure which specific page you're referencing.
Page 14 of 29 in Appendix B.
Appendix B, 14 of 20. Okay, perfect. 14.
Talked about, I guess you do there was review of your
Protective barriers.
Yeah, guardrails, road guardrails and guide rails.
Oh, okay, so yeah, so essentially, sorry again, through you, Mr. Mayor. So guide rails and guardrails are essentially the steel beam protection that is provided on the side of the roads. Normally they're provided where there's bridge structures or hazards that are offset from the road that a vehicle going off the road could cause. The guide rails are used to prevent vehicles from entering off the road and keep them on the road. So we essentially, they get hit from time to time. If they do, we repair them. There was a new guide rail replacement required on the Wolverton Bridge, just near Kemp Road, that we did earlier this year as well. So if there's areas that need to be done, they are identified through our inspections, and we would prioritize those based on our available budget and the needs or risks associated with it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I know it was on the work plan to be done recently, I guess, because it had been identified that it wasn't long enough or something, and some of the pieces had to be extended, but I just didn't see it in here as like a deliverable or a performance indicator that you'd actually had, work that you had done that you'd achieved. That's all. So it was more, because you would be tracking that as an accomplishment is just what I mean, right? That it was at 2019, 2020 completed, right? Satisfactory,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, and maybe the explanation for that is that was actually picked up through our bridge assessments. So our OSM inspections that they do every other year, that was an item that was flagged by the engineer who did that. So they looked at it as an entity of the bridge structure rather than a standard guide rail. So, but no, that's a good point. We can make sure we address that in the future.
It's perfect. Thank you very much for all the clarification. Much appreciated. And again, thank you for the
You're welcome.
The immense amount of work you put into these reports. Much appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Brandon. We just need a mover and seconder to receive the report. Seeing no further questions, Councillor Vardy, Councillor Cadwell. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Cadwell. Resolved that report DPW 20-44 dated December 7th, 2020 be received. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have Brandon again. Report DPW 20-47, the tree planting award contract. Brandon? Councillor Bothwell, you have questions for Brandon?
Yeah, sorry. Thanks again. I won't make you go through the whole report. I know that we approved the purchase of 275 some odd trees at the beginning of October. This report is contracting for the installation of those trees. And I just wondered, have the trees been balled and are they sitting waiting to be put in the ground? And what's the timeline for them to be put in the ground, considering it's this year's budget? And then because you anticipated putting 375 more trees into the spring budget for planting in the spring of 2021. So I just wondered what your timing is to get these 275 trees in the ground, where they are currently. Have they been at the nursery? Are they already ready and balled and waiting to go in the ground? And the maintenance of them. I think we talked about when the guys put them in the ground and install them. I know we're in the middle of winter now. How are we going to ensure, like at one point we were talking about watering and maintaining them and making sure they have what they need to survive through the winter and into the first year? Just wondered what your plans are there.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. So in terms of the first contract that we awarded earlier this year, I think it was in October, was actually for the supply of the trees, as you had mentioned. So that contract is essentially for the purchase of those nursery trees. This next contract is for the actually placement of the trees. And as part of that, the contractor who will be placing them is to receive those trees and store them. That's my understanding of it. So in terms of the timing of the actual installation, obviously we would like to have this done earlier this year and have the trees planted in the fall. Obviously with all the circumstances around everything, we didn't get that done. The idea here is we want to get everything arranged, understanding that this is being paid for as part of this year's budget. But what we will actually be doing is any unspent money, so any money that is either for the purchase of the trees or for the installation of the trees, will be held in reserve or approval to proceed with this 275, and then we will come before council as part of next year's budget for the remaining 325. And again, if it's within our budget as part of the larger budget discussions, then we will carry forward those additional 325 trees then. In terms of the maintenance, again, my understanding is you can plant them in the winter, they go dormant. Obviously, it gets difficult when there's snow on the ground and the ground is frozen. So it all is dependent on weather. So if we can get an early start to it or a start before the end of the year, which is probably unlikely, but an early start to it before spring of next year, then we'll attempt to do that before we get to the spring, and then followed up by the additional trees, once we get a budget approval for them later in the spring.
Thanks. So what I'm hearing is you're basically expecting that these trees aren't going to be planted till the spring. And is there then a plan to have the contractor water them or follow up with them?
Yep. So we didn't include a watering item in this contract, but we did get prices from the contractor. So we do have an idea in terms of a rough number of if we had to water them. And again, it's all dependent on the weather. Our staff expect that we can do some watering. There's also provisions for in the contract or talking to the contractor that they could provide watering bags on a rental basis. So we factored some of those costs in. And again, it's dependent on weather. It's dependent on how busy our staff are at that time and when the watering is needed. So there is some flexibility in there. We have considered it, and we will make sure that they're watered accordingly.
Thanks. And the only reason I'm asking that is because I've had some constituents say that they found a few trees that were recently planted, but mind you, I think it was the timing and it was a dry spell and they didn't make it. So I think anything you can do to help with the success of these trees is much appreciated. So thank you very much for that.
Welcome.
Thank you, Brandon. Councillor Cadwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. I'll be brief here, Brennan. Thanks for your report. Once the trees are planted, is there any type of a warranty that comes with the to protect the trees and for the town? And I also you mentioned the tree bags. Well, I think they're known as bladder bags. Some municipalities call them that, anyways. I think if we're going to be planting trees in the spring, especially with the type of summer we just had, I think that's a great point you brought up. And hopefully we can, maybe all the trees can have bladder bags put to them. But yeah, again, just is there a warranty, Brandon, after the trees are put in? Thank you.
So thank you through Mr. Mayor. There's not a warranty on the actual tree itself unless we are able to determine that it was faulty installation by the contractor. So, we are taking some risk in terms of planting the trees and when they are planted at the time of the year. If there's a disease, like if the tree's found to be defective or something like that, but again, it's difficult to prove. So, again, we do factor in that some trees will die no matter how much you plant them. Once they're plant them, water them, and maintain them, over time they can die off. So we would be prepared to replace those if we needed. In terms of the watering bags, my understanding is they are really expensive to purchase. So we were looking at a more cost-effective route of renting them on a short period just for the watering of our trees. If this is a program that we will be carrying forward and we keep planting as many trees as we are, it may be a good idea for us to invest in like a longer term solution, such as the purchasing the bags or additional types of watering equipment and stuff like that. So it's in the back of our minds, I guess.
Good. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you for your report, Brandon. We just need a mover and seconder for the resolution. Councillor Bothwell, Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that report DPW 20-47 dated December 7th, 2020 be received, and the Director of Public Works be authorized to award the contract for tree planting services to Rodson Landscaping and Services Limited in the amount of $25,960.25, excluding HST. That the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign any agreements and documents, and the clerk is hereby authorized to affix the corporate seal thereto and deliver the same. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have a memo regarding amendments to bylaw 18-86, the administrative penalties bylaw, and bylaw 1445, the town of Grimsby zoning bylaw. Councillor Bothwell or Paul Nickerson, you're going to talk about that? Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yeah, this memorandum is strictly a housekeeping issue. The AMPS bylaw passed in 2018 actually included penalties for zoning, and just through our recent review of our penalty sections of various bylaws, it was actually discovered that the penalty section for zoning infractions is actually under the Planning Act. So what we're asking through this memorandum is just housekeeping to reinstate the penalty provisions for zoning infractions to be put back in the zoning bylaw, which the penalties are captured under the Planning Act. So I would be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Paul. And yes, that seems putting it in the right spot makes a lot more sense. Any questions from council?
Oh, Mayor Jordan.
Councillor Bothwell.
Yeah, so I appreciate it, Paul. I went back to what we currently have published for our zoning bylaw, and the wording that is published on our website is the original wording of so it's the 2.10 is that every person convicted of a breach of the provisions of this bylaw shall be liable upon conviction to penalties as outlined in the Planning Act. So what I see posted online is what you're asking to go back to. So I just wondered, the bylaw 1886 that was passed December 17th, 2018, was a huge AMPS penalty, one that impacted a whole bunch of different bylaws. This one, the zoning bylaw was one of them. And then there was a whole bunch of other bylaws where fees and stuff were to be amended or language was to be changed or added. And I'm just concerned that that bylaw was passed in December 2018, but our zoning bylaw was never updated with the new language. So now you're saying we want to go back to the old language, which is really technically still there. So I'm just a little confused because I just want to make sure too that there's no other impact from that December 17, 2018 bylaw that maybe was also not invoked or not acted upon or not amended in the appropriate bylaw. So I don't know if it's just because we didn't post the correct zoning bylaw on our website, and it should have been amended and it was an oversight. And this is just a cleanup now to go back to it is currently there as you're asking it to be worded. So I'm just unclear on that.
Okay, so through you, Mayor Jordan, I wasn't aware what is posted on our website. We did look at the AMPS bylaw from December 2018, and most of the bylaws are municipal, which are passed under the Municipal Act, but the zoning bylaw is actually passed under the Planning Act. So similar to the Building Code Act, there's certain provincial acts have their penalties within the act, and it doesn't allow municipalities to pass, I guess, penalties in an AMPS bylaw. So the AMPS bylaw is more for what is really a bylaw passed under the Municipal Act.
So that makes total sense. I totally agree with you. I just was a little confused as to if we actually changed our zoning bylaw, because it looks like we didn't. So it's great because we're just then going back to what's in there currently, what I just read, which is posted on our website, which I have no problem with, and until you have a chance to further review it to decide, because you said I think you're going to come back with some more information on it later, if that's correct, eh?
That's correct. Yes.
Antonetta, you want to comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, just that whatever's on the website may have been an oversight, and we can look to update it and make sure that all the language is consistent and is in keeping with what we want to do now to update it to make sure it's reflective of what the proposal in the report is. So we can check the website, but I understand that may have been an oversight and the website just wasn't updated with the accurate information, but we'll make sure that's correct as we move forward.
Well, it sounds like there's nothing you need to do because it's exactly the wording that Paul wants in there.
That we want to revert back to. Yeah, but I think we just want to double check and make sure that everything is correct. Generally, both on the website and with the bylaw.
Thank you.
Thank you, Antonetta. Just need a mover and seconder. Seeing no further discussion. Councillor Frake and Councillor Ritchie. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Ritchie. Resolved that the memo regarding amendment to bylaw 18-86, the administration penalties bylaw, and bylaw 14-45, the Town of Grimsby zoning bylaw, be received, and that council approve bylaw 20-89 and bylaw 20-90. All in favor? That's carried.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Up next, we move to section number 11, notice of motions. First notice of motion is, subject is ward meeting requested by Councillor Sharp. Whereas there is an agreement by both councilors to partake in a ward meeting, therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to organize a meeting for each ward once every year and through virtual participation during COVID and in person thereafter. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given consideration at the December 14th Committee of the Whole meeting. Second notice of motion is requested, or its subject is parking, requested by Councillor Vardy. Whereas there are significant parking issues in parts of Grimsby that affect various issues such as insufficient parking, parking past the allowable time limit, and parking blocking services such as snow and waste removal, be it resolved that staff do the following beginning in January 2021. A, undertake an open house or web consultation or other such public consultation in order to obtain public input on parking issues. B, track all parking complaints. C, investigate areas that are of immediate concern, including but not limited to Nellis Boulevard. D, identify areas, streets with significant issues that are most negatively affected. E, return to council by end of February with a report outlining options to remedy these issues. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given consideration at the December 14th Committee of the Whole meeting. Up next, we have
Mr. Mayor, may I raise a point of order?
Yes, you have a point of order.
Just that motion's already. Yes, that motion was already presented by myself several months ago. There's a report coming forward in January on parking. A study has already been done. So this is just a duplication of an existing motion already. I think if you check with the town manager, you'll find that we're already working on it.
Councillor Bain, you'll be able to bring that up next meeting.
Okay, but you said to avoid double work, that's all.
Yeah, it's the direction from the clerk. Up next, we have item number 12, correspondence. Administration and Finance, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. You want, okay. All right, the clerk. All right. Councillor Bothwell, you want to lift one or more of these?
Yes, please. Thank you. I'd like to lift the Norfolk, so C10, Norfolk County, illicit cannabis operations, A16, letter from the Office of the Ombudsman, and then under Planning and Development, the A16 MPCA Bill 229 proposed changes.
Councillor Sharp.
I didn't have my hand up.
Okay.
Sorry, just to clarify, Councillor Sharp, didn't you want to lift City of Niagara Falls, the Niagara region declaring a state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction?
Yeah, that was in correspondence. Are we in correspondence now?
Yes, we are.
My apologies. I did want to lift, there's no number to it, but it's a resolution from the City of Niagara Falls. And I wanted to read it. We can discuss it if we want, but I wanted to endorse it. It's a motion from the City of Niagara Falls, a resolution asking the region to declare a state of emergency regarding homelessness, mental health, and addiction. And I'd like to endorse that and send it to the region in support of that motion.
Great, thank you, Councillor Sharp. Yes. Yes, so what we'll do now is we'll receive all the other correspondence. We'd need a mover and seconder for that, and then we'll discuss the other ones separately. So a mover and seconder for the original correspondence. Councillor Bain, Councillor Sharp. Moved by Councillor Bain, second by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that the correspondence with reference to Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding enforcement of orders under Reopening of Ontario Act, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding amendments to COVID-19 orders under Reopening Ontario Act 2020, Niagara Region regarding Section 22 order and COVID-19 enforcement, Niagara Region regarding support for Niagara local businesses through COVID-19, Town of Fort Erie regarding resolution for decriminalization of personal possession of illicit drugs, Town of Fort Erie regarding amendment of the AGCO process to consider radial separation from other cannabis, City of Thorold regarding Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks citizens appointment, Town of Fort Erie regarding legislation to support local governments with land use management and enforcement issues regarding Cannabis Act be received. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we have first up Councillor Sharp's correspondence from City of Niagara Falls. We need a seconder for that. Councillor Ritchie. Moved by Councillor Sharp, second by Councillor Ritchie. Resolved that correspondence from City of Niagara Falls with reference to Niagara Region declaring a state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction be received, and that, do you want to endorse it? He wanted to endorse it, so.
Yes. Yeah.
So it should be endorsed, right? Rather than received. All right. All right. I'll start that again. Resolved that correspondence from the City of Niagara Falls with reference to Niagara Region declaring a state of emergency on mental health, homeless, and addiction be endorsed, and that the Town of Grimsby support the City of Niagara Falls request to declare a state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction, and that this resolution be circulated to Niagara Regional Council and local area municipalities. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Sharp, you wanted to comment on that? Your hand.
I just wanted to say that I would show support for Niagara Falls resolution, but it's carried, and I'm happy to move on. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Up next, we have the, is this just the one? Which one's that one? All right, the illicit cannabis operations. We have a mover of Councillor Bothwell, seconder, Councillor Frake. And Councillor Bothwell, did you want to comment?
I'm just, the clerk's prepared the motion to show that we're endorsing and supporting Norfolk County's original motion, which was supported by the town of Lincoln, our neighbors, and a number of other municipalities are experiencing a lot of the same issues and concerns with respect to illicit cannabis operations, which are illegal ones. And this is just asking the government to further to better provide better regulation and tracking of these types of issues and enforcement. So I think we need to, it's showing support to the communities that are dealing with the associated crime of illicit cannabis operations in their communities, and asking government to step in and do provide some further supports. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Seeing no further discussion, moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the Town of Grimsby supports the Town of Lincoln correspondence item dated November 17th, 2020 as attached, and also supports the motion passed by the municipality of Norfolk County on October 20th, 2020, and correspondence dated October 26, 2020 as attached with respect to illicit cannabis operations. And further, this endorsement and attachments be circulated to Dean Allison, Minister or Member of Parliament, Sam Oosterhoff, Member of Provincial Parliament, and all other municipalities. All in favor? That's carried. We need a mover and seconder to receive the letter from the Ombudsman Office. Councillor Bothwell, Councillor Dunstall. Moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Dunstall. Resolved that the letter from the Ombudsman Office be received. All in favor?
I'm going to speak to this. Sorry.
All
the
right,
mayor-
Councillor Bothwell, you'd like to speak to it before we approve it?
Please. This has been some time coming because it was originally, I think the complaints were filed back in February. And it's taken them some time to come back with the results and their recommendations. I would just, being on the Heritage Committee and being impacted by this decision, I thought it was timely that I speak to it briefly. And one of the paragraphs, I'm just going to refer to quickly a couple paragraphs in it, that they've made the statement that any resolution of an advisory committee, including the selection of a chair, is not final or binding until approved by council. And that's what staff also advised the Ombudsman's Office, and that this is reflected in the definition of advisory committee. And that staff indicated that although the committee's terms of reference refer to the election of a chair, the selection of a chair should more properly be characterized as a recommendation that does not take effect until council is approving it. And it was open to council to accept or reject, which was what staff indicated, notwithstanding the wording of the committee's minutes. Its selection of a chair was considered to be a recommendation to council, which was open to council to accept or reject. And they also note that the minutes that were lifted for separate consideration, and that the January 23rd minutes be approved as amended to read, resolved that John Dunstall be elected as chair of the Heritage Committee Advisory for the year 2020. One of their recommendations that came out of it was that minutes should reflect council's decisions without amending or altering the record of the committee's meetings. So they did note that it's correct that the original minutes are posted on the website, but that was a recommendation that minutes should not be amended. They also note that political decisions, such as the appointment of particular individuals to a committee or office, are not the types of decisions normally subject to ombudsman scrutiny. Elected officials are accountable to the public through the democratic process for these types of decisions. So I just wanted to ask the clerk, as a result of the recommendations in this report, what actions might be taken moving forward, considering that this does mean that any advisory committee that has within their terms of reference selection or election of a chair or vice chair is subject to council's overarching ability to overrule if they see fit. I just wondered what the clerk's next steps are with respect to that or any of the recommendations in this report. Thank you.
Sarah?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in the new year, we're going to be looking at all of the advisory committees and all the terms of reference to make sure that they're all consistent, and we will be incorporating the best practices stated in this letter to make sure that that's all reflected in the terms of reference.
Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad to hear that we're taking some of the Ombudsman's recommendations and following through with them, especially looking at the terms of reference. I'm also curious, I don't see any date here of February, so I don't know how anybody knows when this complaint went in. I'm also curious as to if we know who filed this complaint, because it also does not say, it's just a report from the Ombudsman. It does not say who filed it. And I find that very curious as to, an individual has filed a complaint, but the Ombudsman has chosen to be silent on that. So do we ever find that out to our clerk?
Sarah?
No, all The complainant's identity is kept confidential unless there's consent. And I was not told, or any of the staff were told of the complainants.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Dunstall. Resolved that the letter from the Ombudsman Office be received. All in favor? That's carried. Our next committee of the whole meeting, sorry, getting ahead of myself. This is the rest of the correspondence that was lifted. Oh, sorry, is this different? Okay, this is long. We have mover of Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Bothwell, did you want to speak to this?
Just briefly, again, this is the Conservation Authority's changes with respect to Bill 229, and there are just some very, very serious concerns have been raised by a number of municipalities, a number of groups, environmental groups, that Schedule 6 is causing extreme damage to the role that our conservation authorities do to support municipalities and support our environment. And I think it's really, really important that we send the message, a strong message, that we also feel that Schedule 6 is not appropriate, needs to be removed, and that we need to protect the role of our conservation authorities and the mandate that they have to serve us. And so I wanted to send the message. I know that I think commenting has closed, and I think that the decision was being made or is being made as we speak. So although we may be a little late in sending this message, I just want to be on the record that we are sending this message loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Yes, it is a very important message to be sent. Councillor Cadwell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jordan, and through you. Yeah, I was just wondering too, I know this has been well on its way, so to speak, but is there a possibility that we could ask the chair, Brenda Johnson of the NPCA, or the vice chair to come to council and just to maybe the next meeting as a delegation, just to educate us? There was a lot of reading through that, which I did do that. And again, sometimes when I hear it right from the people that are involved, that helps me a lot in my learning and education too. So just throwing that out, if that's something we could invite the vice chair or the chair of the NPCA as a delegation for our next meeting, just so we can have some educating discussions. Thank you.
Yeah, it's I don't see why that couldn't be arranged. Probably good to have even more liaison with the NPCA.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I certainly have to endorse what Councillor Bothwell said. This is very important. It may be a bit late for us to come through now, but I think it's really, really seriously important that we be on record as endorsing this particular resolution. And a few of the other municipalities are also listed in here as well. So I'd like to second that motion by Councillor Bothwell. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frake. Antonetta, you wanted to comment?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, planning staff as well have a myriad of very serious concerns. We've been following this closely. We are tracking a report to outline for council some of the changes that how Grimsby can be impacted by this, in particular as it relates to planning, but a whole host of ecological concerns and other concerns. So we do have a draft report, and today we were actually working on amending that draft report because of Schedule 6 and asking for the immediate removal of Schedule 6 from Bill 229. And despite unified warnings from municipalities, AMO, the big city mayors, conservation authorities, etc., it seems that they're moving ahead with this. They want to actually make, in fact, Bill 229 even worse than what we thought, through the creation of a new process that will bypass conservation authorities. And we're very concerned about that. We're concerned about the impact to planning staff, we don't have that expertise in-house when we review planning applications. So we do have a draft report prepared for council. It's targeting December 21st. We have reached out to our colleagues at the MPCA to see how else we can support them. So I would also say that if we want to reach out to a member of the MPCA, as Councillor Cadwell suggested, maybe they could come when our report comes, and we're happy to put forward a letter similar to what we did with the proposed changes with Bill 108 for heritage. But just so that you know, we do have a report drafted and it is anticipated to come on December 21st.
Thank you, Antonetta. Seeing no further questions, moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the correspondence with references to Bill 229, proposed changes to the Conservation Authority Act, and Bill 229 Conservation Authorities be received, and be it further resolved, whereas the province has introduced Bill 229, protects, support, and recover from COVID-19 Act, Schedule 6 Conservation Authorities Act, whereas the legislation introduces a number of changes in new sections that could remove and or significantly hinder the conservation authorities' role in regulating development and engaging in review and appeal of municipal planning applications, whereas we rely on the watershed expertise provided by local conservation authorities to protect residents' property and local natural resources on a watershed basis by regulating the development and engaging in reviews of applications submitted under the Planning Act, whereas the changes allow the minister to make decisions without conservation authority watershed data and expertise, whereas the legislation suggests that the minister will have the ability to establish standards and requirements for non-mandatory programs which are negotiated between the conservation authorities and municipalities to meet local watershed needs, whereas the municipalities require a longer transition time to put in place agreements with conservation authorities for non-mandatory programs, whereas municipalities believe that the appointment of municipal representatives on conservation authority boards should be a municipal decision, and the chair and vice chair of the Conservation Association board should be duly elected, whereas the changes to the duty of members contradicts the fiduciary duty of conservation authority board member to represent the best interests of the conservation authority and its responsibility to the watershed, whereas conservation authorities have already been working with the province, development sector, and municipalities to streamline and speed up permitting and planning approvals through the Conservation Ontario's Client Service and Streamlining Initiative, whereas changes to the legislation will create more red tape and costs for the conservation authorities and their municipal partners, and potentially result in delays in the development approval process. And whereas municipalities value and rely on the natural habitats and water resources within our jurisdiction for the health and well-being of residents, municipalities value the conservation authorities' work to prevent and manage the impacts of flooding and other natural hazards, and municipalities value the conservation authorities' work to ensure safe drinking water. Therefore, be it resolved that the province of Ontario work with conservation authorities to address their concerns by repealing and or amending changes to the Conservation Authorities Act and the Planning Act, that the province of Ontario delay enactment of clauses affecting municipal concerns, that the province of Ontario provide a longer transition period up to December 2022 for non-mandatory programs to enable coordination of conservation authority municipal budget processes, that the province respect the current conservation authority municipal relationships, and that the province embrace their long-standing partnership with the conservation authorities and provide them with the tools and financial resources they need to effectively implement their watershed management role, and that this resolution be circulated to the Premier, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Minister of Finance, the Auditor General, Sam Oosterhoff, Member of Provincial Parliament, Dean Allison, Member of Parliament, local area municipalities, MPCA, and Conservation Ontario. All in favor? That's carried. And now we move to the next meeting for the Committee of the Whole is scheduled for December 14th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. and will be available through electronic participation. This meeting is adjourned. We will be coming back at 8:40. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to start our council meeting for Monday, December 7th, 2020. First call to order. And now we'll have, everyone's here, so we'll have playing of the national anthem. All right, are there any pecuniary interests? Seeing none, we move to number 4, approval of the agenda. Need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Dunstall. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Dunstall. Resolved that the agenda for the council meeting of December 7th, 2020 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have approval of previous minutes. Questions, Councillor Dunstall? Well, let's get a mover and seconder on and then we'll have discussion. Mover, Councillor Dunstall, seconder, Councillor Vane. Councillor Dunstall, go ahead with comments.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I was wondering if I could lift resolution 6.2.a in the committee of the whole meeting of November the 16th for further discussion. That's concerning the Integrity Commissioner complaints, that resolution.
So we have the mover is Councillor Dunstall to lift that. Seconder? Councillor Sharp? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that CW 20-070 be lifted from the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16th, 2020 for separate consideration. Discussion?
May I?
Yes, Councillor Dunstall.
Your Worship. Yeah, I voted in favor of this. My concern was that in voting in favor of being open and transparent, my concern is that we're generalizing it. And I know in the past with Integrity Commissioner complaints between councillors, that's already been open and transparent with the Integrity Commissioner. My concern is residents that file complaints against councillors. I'm concerned that if they're left to be open and transparent once the conclusions have come to those particular complaints, that we might less have having legitimate complaints against us because people would not be able to remain anonymous. So I'm quite comfortable with us being transparent with each other, but I'm not so sure about residents, and I think they'd like to stay anonymous because, especially if they if it's put out in the open and other people might, it's not a very comfortable feeling. And so I would either like to have it amended to include that this is just for us as councillors and not including residents when they file complaints. Now it was moved.
So Councillor Dunstall, first to actually discuss it, we need to pass it. So.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So I'll read it. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that CW 20-070 be lifted from the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16th, 2020 for separate consideration. Do we do a recorded vote or do we want to just vote? I don't. All right, all in favor. No one's called for a recorded vote. Okay, so that is lifted.
So I think everybody understands where I'm coming from. I'm concerned about residents filing complaints against councillors, and I don't think that that should be open to residents having to be open and transparent. I think they should be able to remain anonymous. I don't know how my fellow councillors feel about it, but I mean, we're always going to have somebody that puts something forward that is frivolous and vexatious, but that's why we're councillors. You know, we just have to accept it. So I'm just looking for a friendly amendment there.
All right, well, we'll continue the discussion. Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think what Councillor Dunstall is saying, that there are some, I would think not all, residents who might file an integrity complaint against, I guess, a councillor. I don't know if they can file it against staff, but against councillors. Yeah, I mean, they could, if they're exposed, I mean, if they're publicly exposed, there could be some follow from that from them. I understand that completely. I understand where he's coming from there. However, my friendly amendment, if any, would be give them the choice. Ask them if they, if they want to remain anonymous, or do they want to, just let it be public. I mean, I think that let them decide that. But I certainly understand where Councillor Dunstall is coming from.
Councillor Sharp.
Thanks, Mayor Jordan. I also understand where Councillor Dunstall is coming from, and I mentioned this at the last meeting. People who have legitimate complaints It's not just community members, it's also members of our town staff. If they make a complaint about council, it remains confidential. And then I look at this motion and I can't remember. Can you read the motion that we are discussing?
Yes, the clerk will read it.
Okay.
You, Mr. Mayor, the one that was passed on the November 16th Committee of the Whole read, whereas as a council, we are committed to openness and transparency. And whereas Integrity Commissioner complaints are serious undertakings which reflect on the behavior of council members, and whereas frivolous and vexatious complaints are costly to the taxpayers, be it resolved that all Integrity Commissioner complaints, whether won, lost, a draw, or withdrawn, or deemed not to be further investigated, be made public, and the cost of all complaints, so that the transparency is achieved and frivolous and vexatious complaints are not proffered, and further that the cost of all complaints be made public.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So what I'm concerned about is I've taken some time to go through the new code of conduct. We just passed it on October 5th. That was a month ago or something, about a month and a half ago. And our Integrity Commissioner wrote it for us. And so I think, first of all, the costs are already public. I previously asked the treasurer and clerk for the cost of the most recent complaints that came out in August 17th or whatever the date was. But it's a public document. Like, you just ask for it. But so a councillor could bring a motion asking for that, and it would be brought in public session, or any resident could ask at any time for that information and they can have it. So we make this resolution to do something that is already public. Also, in our new code of conduct, we look at section 2.1. There's definitions, and one of the definitions is confidential information, and that's section 2.1G, sentence VIII. And one of the things that is considered confidential information is the source of the complaints. So I feel like that this motion is going against that definition in our bylaw. And I also want to point out that in Appendix A, which is the complaint procedure, we look at section 2F. It talks about that the Integrity Commissioner shall report annually on complaints that were not in his jurisdiction, but not disclose any information that could identify a person. And also in the same appendix, 5C, it says where a complaint is dismissed other than exceptional circumstances, the Integrity Commissioner shall not report other than in the annual report. So, and then later in Appendix B or somewhere else, it talks about the annual report, and it talks about that the Integrity Commissioner shall make a report annually, and that he may generalize his advice, but that he won't disclose information in such a way that he will protect the confidence of complainants. And so I feel like the resolution that we're making is it goes against our bylaw. First of all, we have portions of the resolution which are already public information that we're asking to be made public. And second of all, the information that the portions of these reports which is confidential is written in our bylaw. Like 5 weeks ago, we just approved this. And then we come back to saying that we want to make everything public and that we want to do these reports. And that does what my colleague, Councillor Dunstall, has pointed out, is that it might prevent someone from making a legitimate complaint when they actually have a complaint because they don't want to be identified, right? And then, so it's like we're duplicating a process that we just approved, and it's like we're actually contradicting the process that we approved in a manner that makes it harder. This code holds us accountable. And so I understand that there are some councillors who have had complaints made against them that have been withdrawn. And I think that they have some idea of who has made these complaints, but those complaints made against these counselors were made confidentially. And when they were withdrawn, whether the counselor is upset or not, the complainant remains confidential, and that is for a purpose. And the purpose is that we want to make it accessible and safe for people to come forward with complaints. And these complaints aren't made anonymously, but they're made confidentially. And so that you make the complaint to the clerk, and the clerk keeps your information private. And if we make reports on costs and advice from the Integrity Commissioner, we keep your information private. And so you, if you're a member of staff or if you're a member of the public and you have a concern about my conduct or any of my colleagues on council, this is the manner on which you address it. And so the resolution that we brought, I voted against it, and I would vote against it today. I think that our code includes these things, and that we seem to be taking it upon ourselves, I think maybe out of spite for a complaint that was withdrawn, but I don't know that for certain. So this is just my opinion. I'll close with that. Thanks.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. To be honest, I'm really ambivalent. I understand the notion that residents may want to be able to freely and confidentially make a complaint. But if you look at any court of law, you can't bring a complaint anonymously against someone. And if I look at what's happened in the past, certainly, Integrity Commissioner complaints among counselors have been used to harass, have been used to antagonize. And so they've been weaponized by some counselors. And, I think we have to find a way to make that stop. I mean, I'm going to call point of order. Excuse me, I'm speaking.
Point of order. That accusation.
Mr. Mayor, could
I don't think that's appropriate.
Could you please comment on the point of order? I'd like to continue speaking.
But a point of order takes precedent over speaking.
Well, then, Mayor.
Yeah, just Councillor Vardy, just don't name any individuals.
I wasn't planning on naming any individual,
right.
other than myself. So I take the point, but I think that if you're going to accuse someone of something, then stand by your conviction and name yourself. I mean, if I honestly worry that those people that have used Integrity Commissioner complaints to what I would say, in my opinion, to antagonize and harass, will just find residents, their pals, to do it for them. Because I think some of the people who have done this have perhaps lacked a certain amount of integrity. So I think that's all I've got to say, really, is that I have mixed feelings. If the behavior of certain members of council have been different, I might feel differently. But at this point, I feel as though everybody who makes a complaint has to stand up and own it. That's what happens in a court of law. And why should we be any different? Thank you.
Councillor Bain.
Yes, I agree with a lot of what Councillor Vardy said. She's right. Some councillors have weaponized this against other councillors, and some have actually lied, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. It's all my opinion. As far as my biggest concern here, and as far as the law, yeah, there is ways you can make complaints anonymously, but I'm not going to get into that and break this down. All I'm going to say is that my biggest concern is the wording of the bylaw. You can tell it's a vindictive motion because it starts with or otherwise. This is not a win-lose situation. When I go to court as part of my career, my job that I've been doing for 31 years, I don't go in there to win against the defendant. I don't go in there to lose against the defendant. I go in there to do what's right. And I testify. So that tells me right away, as soon as you start having win and lose, nah, this is not a good motion. This is a bad motion, and I'm not going to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The one thing I'm going to reiterate what I said at the last council meeting is that we paid the integrity commissioner to write our code of conduct, and he put in there the way it's written, and we're going to change it. I also look at an ombudsman report that just came at the committee of the whole meeting just prior to this, and the complainant was anonymous. So to say that it doesn't happen, it absolutely does. And my fear is if we have, say, a resident now file a complaint, and the integrity commissioner assumes that it's frivolous and vexatious, and that individual then chooses, and we've changed his code of conduct. So we've changed it, we've taken it upon ourselves. So he can now say he had nothing to do with the recommendations in the code of conduct. And that individual from the public then decides to move forward and challenge the process, which you can do. You can challenge the process to the ombudsman, and the ombudsman turns around and states, because it can be anonymous, that the process was done wrong. And we've already published that this individual's complaint was frivolous and vexatious, and maybe they have some damages done by other members of the public by calling them and saying that it's a bad thing. Will that open us up to any legal liabilities? That's the question that I look at for us, is that for us changing something that we paid someone to do, and a member of the public does this and challenges the process in regards to the investigation. So the ombudsman turns around and says the investigation was not done properly, and therefore, they're not allowed to overturn the decision of the integrity commissioner, but they could then say that that was unfair, that the comments were frivolous and vexatious, and therefore they could turn around and say, well, this council let it go public, and maybe they look at us and they come after us in some kind of legal matter.
Councillor Sharp.
Sorry, I guess I had my hand up. I didn't realize, but so as I mentioned before, what my colleague Councillor Ritchie just mentioned is that the ombudsman report that was just made was made confidentially, and I want to make the difference between anonymously and confidentially. So we don't accept anonymous complaints, and I don't think the ombudsman accepts anonymous complaints either, but they do keep complaints confidential. So you can't just like send an unsigned letter to the ombudsman or the clerk and make a complaint. It's not allowed. You have to put your name on it. You have to have an affidavit. So you have to do this in front of the clerk, and you have to swear. She's a taker of oaths, right? So you make a complaint and you make an oath to that complaint. And this is like a really like formal and official process. And you also have to make you make it on what do they call it? I forget the name of the first step, but when you make the official complaint, there's a $200 deposit, and that $200 deposit is forfeited if the ombudsman determines that it is frivolous or vexatious. So there's already measures in place to prevent people from making frivolous and vexatious complaints. I had a complaint made against me by another councillor, and that complaint there was three components to that complaint, and the integrity commissioner only investigated one of the three complaints, and I was named with two other councillors in that, and one of the other councillors, Councillor Vane, had a few complaints made against him. One of the complaints against Councillor Vane was that he owned a gun, and that a person with his temperament shouldn't own a weapon. And so this was not an anonymous complaint, or it's not a confidential complaint either. The councillor who made the complaint against me and two of my other colleagues waived her right to confidence. And so you can see that on the August 17th minutes. There's a report there, but the report only shows one of the complaints made against me. There was actually two other complaints that were made that weren't deemed valid, or they were frivolous, and they weren't a breach. And the complaint that was investigated was also found not to be a breach of the code of conduct. And this was Councillor Vardy who made the complaint against me, and the two other colleagues. And so it's Councillor Vardy who makes this resolution, looking for, I think someone made a complaint and then withdrew that complaint. And I don't know the details, right? Because it's in confidence. We actually already had a report from the Integrity Commissioner on that. And he said that, and it says right in Appendix A or B, sorry, there's a couple appendixes in there. It says that if the complaint is withdrawn, that the Integrity Commissioner will not report to council on it. It says that he will include it in his annual report, which is a general report of the complaints made, but there will be no personal information given. And so we're changing that. And I hear the timer, so I'll say thank you. That's it.
We have Councillor Bothwell, then Councillor Vardy.
So I understand the concerns about privacy issues and the public. I understand Councillor Vardy's concerns too about that there's a potential that alternate people can be used as a tool to get a complaint put forward. I have been a subject of a number of complaints, and I also feel the pain of that going through the process, because it can take months that you do to respond to the initial complaint, and goes back, and then you respond with more detail, and you can get through all this, like a couple months of this back and forth of information, and then the complainant can withdraw when it gets to the point where they're asked for specifics or some further details that they can't provide to justify it. You get to this point where you're putting all your effort into it, and then the person who let it get to this point decides, well, I probably didn't have enough to make it go forward further, or I'm not going to substantiate any further, I'm just going to drop it. That shouldn't be happening either. It's just so, if you put, that's where Councillor Vardy's point about these are serious undertakings, and we've just had a pattern where I think we're hopefully past it. I'm hoping that this meeting and where we're at now is that we're not going to see a continuation of these types of things, because it's not helpful for anyone. But I think what I'd like to see, if I understand the concerns from the public and privacy, if there's a way maybe to look at, as Councillor Frake also mentioned, maybe just slightly amending it to redact the identity of members of the public who file. I don't know. It's just a thought. To provide that privacy for them. But I really think that it would have been worthwhile to have ones that are withdrawn. I think they should be shown to see just how much is put into them and at what point they were withdrawn, because it's frustrating. It's just really, really frustrating to get to that stage and then have someone say, I'm not going any further. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
Thanks. I would just like to address Councillor Sharp's comments. If you go back and actually read the report, the incident that took place was when Councillor Sharp invited me up to his room for a drinky poo. And while I said I can't stay, this was in Ottawa, I'm meeting someone, but I didn't want to be unfriendly. So I went up to his room and stayed for a few minutes. And during that time, Councillor Sharp said I was a bully. And I explained to Councillor Sharp, no, I think you're just not accustomed to a woman who has a strong opinion. The Integrity Commissioner found that your behavior was very disturbing. While he did not, and only because I said in my complaint, I didn't take offense to what you said. I just refuted it. But that's what you did, Councillor Sharp. And, that combined with Councillor Vane calling me the biggest bully on council, and Councillor Cadwell, I'm sorry, but we're going to air our dirty laundry. Councillor Cadwell, on multiple occasions, speaking down to me and in front of residents in a very rude way. And you know, to me, that spoke of collusion. And that's what I wanted to put forward, that there was collusion about trying to paint me as a bully. And the integrity commissioner said I have to file individual complaints. So, you know, I didn't really have any choice. But even after the integrity commissioner found Councillor Vane to be in contravention of the code, in another meeting, Councillor Vane called me a liar.
I think we need to stop it at that. So,
Mr. Mayor, allow me to finish. When I said that could be the basis of an integrity commissioner complaint, he said, "Oh, I'm so scared." You know, we have the recording, so you can hear it all. So if you're going to name names and talk about these complaints, then you got to own what you've done. Thank you.
Councillor Frake, you haven't spoken yet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I haven't, but I think I'll leave my comments for another time because, you know, I have had anonymous complaints which were totally libelous and very damaging, not to only personality and character, but it goes over the line into criminal. And I'll leave it at that. And I don't want to get into any more details. I think we've aired enough dirty laundry for one night.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. And again, we keep on talking about members of the public, but I also think that it's very important that our staff should be protected as well. With that, though, Councillor Sharp has made many points on how this could or may affect the entire code of conduct and all the different schedules and all the rest. And whether I agree or disagree with this motion, I do think that this motion should be referred to staff or back to the integrity commissioner to how this motion would actually change that entire document, because it's referenced in multiple points. And I don't think it's just as simple to make a simple change here, because how will that affect the other components of that? And that's why I voted against it in the last place, because we've already spent $45,000, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong, could be 5,000, but I know we spent quite a significant amount of money from Mr. Harnick on this report and his recommendations. And now here we are looking at the potential to make a change, which could affect the entire document. So right now, for myself, I'm not in favor of this motion at all, but I would be. I'll put that on the floor right now to refer this to staff or to the appropriate individuals to have a report on how this motion may change the entire document.
The clerk's preparing that motion to refer. Do we have a seconder for that?
If I could have the floor, Mayor Jordan, I have my hand up.
Well, yeah, Councillor Sharp, with all due respect, you've already spoken twice, and I don't think we're going to go for a third round.
Then you have to call the question. I want to speak.
Well, we're working on a
Point of order. I want to
deferral,
speak.
right? Well, we're working on a deferral right now, so I'm going to work on that first. We'll vote on that first, and then we'll move from there.
It's a referral, but I had my hand up and I've asked to speak.
Yeah, well, it's not going to happen right now. We need a seconder. If you want to second this motion, I'm happy with that. If someone else.
I'll second it.
All right. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that Resolution CW 20-70 of the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16th, 2020 be referred back to staff. Councillor Sharp, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I do. I'm not supporting a referral to staff. I think that this is wasting our staff's time. I said it earlier, well, each of these points is already included in the appendixes of our code of conduct that we just approved 5 weeks ago. There's Appendix A, talks about an annual report, but it talks about confidentiality in that report. Appendix B talks about when things are withdrawn. And I can see that this is councillors trying to get back at whomever is making these complaints. I think some might have been made by staff against councillors, but I don't know that for sure. And I think some was made by councillors against councillors. I haven't made any complaints against anybody. And there was a complaint made against me, and it was found to be.
I have a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor.
It was found to be.
Is there anything made that a referral?
It was found to be that I did not.
It's a referral. So
Can we debate referrals?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, motion to refer may be debated, but only as to the merits of the referral and not the substance of the main motion.
Okay, then I stand with my point that I think that the referral is a waste of staff's time. I think that it's already included in the Integrity Commissioner Code of Conduct for members of council, and the Appendix A, B, and C is not really relevant, but A and B refer to these reports made annually. And I think that I think what I will do is I'll vote down this referral. I'll also vote down the original motion, and then we'll just have a standing code of conduct that we approved 5 weeks ago. And we don't need to run our staff through the ringer, and they're probably going to seek some legal advice and spend some money, and they're going to definitely call the Integrity Commissioner. We pay him $350 an hour to go through this stuff, and this is taxpayers' money. And we have a code of conduct that we just paid him $350 an hour to write for us, and it already includes all this stuff. And so some of my colleagues are a bit spiteful, in my opinion, of previous complaints have been made. And I haven't made any complaints. I also haven't been found guilty of any complaints. And the discussion I had with Councillor Vardy was a polite discussion about why it was hard for her to get along with people. And that's
Councillor Sharp, you're going off the merits.
Yeah,
of the
okay,
referral.
I agree. Thanks, Mayor Jordan. Let me finish. I won't support the referral because I think it's a waste of staff's time, and I won't support the original motion because the code of conduct encompasses it. Thanks.
Councillor Vane.
I'm going to agree with both Councillor Vardy and Councillor Sharp. I won't support this, and I won't support the original motion either. I do agree with Councillor Vardy, though, making the point about airing our public laundry. You know what, code of conduct complaints, ombudsman complaints, talking about it in council, not getting any of us anywhere. It's just, if you want to be vindictive, go ahead. And, you know, for different things, in situations, if I make a mistake, I'm more than willing to apologize for it. I'm going to stand up and say what I mean, and I'm not going to change my mind no matter what you say. If I say it, I mean it. And so, you know, that's fine. Maybe the place is not to say it in the council, and that's fine. But as far as the motion itself, no, I think we're getting silly here. As Councillor Sharp has said, we have already we spent money, we wasted money, as far as I'm concerned, to rewrite this code of conduct. I think it was fine the way it was. I think, you know, we sit here and we complain about all this money we want to spend on things, and then suddenly we get a valuable thing for Parks and Rec or something, or for Public Works, and we say, oh, well, that's a waste of money. But we want to waste more money and more staff time. The staff, come on, we've already run the staff into the ground. We're fighting COVID here, people. You know what, we some of us, you know, disagree with each other. That's fine. If we want to talk about it in council, let's do it. Let's stop wasting money on it. If you got something to say it. We're all adults. That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Dunstall.
Can I call the question? Can I call the question? Can we vote?
Yeah, we need 2/3 majority to call it.
Can we vote on that, on Councillor Dunstall's comment to call
Yeah,
the question?
the clerk is preparing that.
Don't we have to vote first to call the question?
That's
Can we
what the
just do that by
clerk's-
show of hands?
That's what the clerk's preparing.
I believe
Can we just do it
Councillor
by show of
Boswell
hands?
had comments.
Mine was specific to the motion and just the wording. It's a straightforward question about the wording.
Yeah, I'll allow that. I'll break with the procedure and allow that.
It's all it is just saying, I believe the motions be referred back to staff. I just thought that that's a little open-ended for me because it doesn't say what we want staff to do with it, with the motion. So that's all. It doesn't say, and for them to report back or to seek clarification or anything. So I'm finding the motion a little bit open-ended.
Yeah, I do believe, I agree with you that it should be cleaned up. So.
Who's the mover?
I moved it, but I believe I said that refer it back to staff to see how it would affect the entire document.
And I'm the seconder. I'm okay with that.
What document?
Code of conduct.
That's what we're talking about, right? So it's the document that
I'm still not in favor of this referral. I seconded to get it on the floor, but I'm going to vote it down.
The motion to call the question, moved by Councillor Sharp, second by Councillor Vane. Resolved that the question be called to refer the resolution CW 20-070 of the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16th, 2020. And it's a
Mayor.
recorded vote. So
I have an opportunity to speak on this. I have not spoken to it yet.
yes, go ahead, Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this motion the first time as I did. I'm not going to support anything going back to our staff. I think Councillor Vane put in a very good perspective. You know, that the staff doesn't need to be doing this kind of things. We have our terms of reference already under our code of conduct. Let's just live by that. Can we try to do that? That's all I have to say, and that's my opinion.
So I've read the resolution to call the question. So we'll see if we have 6 hands to call the question. There's actually only 5 to call the question. So I think everyone's spoken now, so it doesn't really matter. So moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Sharp, resolved that resolution CW 20-070 of the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16th, 2020 be referred back to staff to seek clarifications on changes to the Code of Conduct bylaw. Recorded vote.
Councillor Bothwell,
No.
Councillor Dunstall,
Yes.
Councillor Frake,
No.
Councillor Cadwell,
No.
Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Ritchie,
sorry. Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
No.
Councillor Vane,
Yes.
Councillor Vardy,
No.
Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
that's defeated.
All right, so where do we move to? All right.
Can I have a point of clarity on this now?
Yes, we're moving back to the amendment, the
Great.
original amendment moved by Councillor Dunstall.
So I just, with the point of clarity, if the amendment is also voted down, it goes back to the original motion, does it not?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
So we just need a seconder for Councillor Dunstall's amendment.
I will. What was the amendment?
I'll read it now that you've seconded. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that Resolution CW 20-070 of the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16th, 2020 be amended that all Integrity Commissioner complaints be made public and that the identity of complainants that are non-elected officials be kept confidential unless consented. Discussion?
I do, Mayor Jordan, if you'll
Councillor
give me.
Sharp?
So my concern is that this would require an amendment to our code of conduct and to the appendixes contained within the code of conduct, and that'll require we'll have to talk to the Integrity Commissioner. I mean, he just wrote the code of conduct, but he'll have to change it for portions, right? Because so complainants are protected, and you'll have to redefine complainants as I don't know how you redefine. And there's also there are unlikely, but there's legitimate circumstances where a councillor or an elected official may want to remain confidential, right? We don't accept anonymous complaints. You have to sign an affidavit. You have to pay the $200 deposit. But I mean, there's crazy situations where, like, one of my colleagues, Councillor Ritchie, might touch me inappropriately, right? And I highly doubt it. It's never going to happen. But if he does, and I make a complaint about it, I don't want people to know, right? And same with a member of staff who might have a complaint. I guess the staff, anyways. I think this would require amendment to our code of conduct, and so I'm not going to support this either. I think that we should just go with our code of conduct as written 5 weeks ago by the Integrity Commissioner. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
Yeah, I just want to say that, we amend bylaws all the time. I don't think we would have to go back to the Integrity Commissioner to amend our code of conduct. It's our code of conduct. It's not the Integrity Commissioners. So I really don't see an issue with this.
I've just got clarification from the clerk that, yes, that is a fact. The clerk can just amend it very simply. Any further discussion?
Could you read the second part of that motion again? I apologize.
Certainly. And that identity of complainants that are non-elected officials be kept confidential unless consented. Councillor Ritchie?
So that would, I don't think I'm going to vote in favor of this either, but that would cover, I want clarity on that it would cover staff as well. Is that correct?
Yes, the clerk has nodded her head that yes, it would cover staff.
I agree. I have to agree with Councillor Sharp, though, that we just had the code of conduct written by 5 weeks ago. And, obviously people didn't like how that was written. But again, to me, it seems like a waste of $40,000 and how that would have to be changed throughout the entire document. because of the intent and the meaning of all the different sections, I think that it could be putting us into an awkward position. And like I said before, just look at the ombudsman. I mean, if somebody wants to consent to their name being forward, I would have no problem with that, just like the ombudsman's office.
Just a note, I think when we went through the code of conduct that night, we made changes as a council, so this isn't unprecedented. So no further speakers. I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that resolution CW 20-070 of the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16, 2020 be amended, that all integrity commissioner complaints be made public, and that the identity of complainants that are non-elected officials be kept confidential unless consented. Recorded vote.
Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall,
Yes.
Councillor Frake,
Could you read that motion again, Mr. Mayor?
Resolved that resolution CW 20-070 of the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16, 2020 be amended, that all integrity commissioner complaints be made public, and that the identity of complainants that are non-elected officials be kept confidential unless consented.
Yes.
Councillor Cowell,
I'll vote yes because of the last part of it.
Councillor Ritchie,
No.
Councillor Sharp,
Yes.
Councillor Vane,
Yes.
Councillor Vardy,
No.
Mayor Jordan.
Yes.
That's carried.
Moving back to the rest. Moving back to the rest of our agenda, moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Ritchie.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to lift under the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16th, 6.1A, ward boundaries.
Just need a seconder to get it on the floor. Councillor Cadwell. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Cadwell. Resolved that CW 20-68 be lifted from the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16th, 2020 for separate consideration. All in favor to lift it? Does it have to be 2/3 or not? Majority. Okay, hands please again. It's close. 1, 2. That's defeated. There's only 4 to lift. So that's not lifted.
Can I ask for a roll call, recorded vote?
It's a 2, right?
I
All right.
wanna-
Yeah, the
Yeah.
clerk will ask.
Councillor Bothwell,
No.
Councillor Dunstall,
No.
Councillor Frake,
No.
Councillor Cadwell,
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie,
Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
Yes.
Councillor Vane,
Yes.
Councillor Vardy,
No.
Mayor Jordan.
No.
That's defeated.
Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Vane, resolved that the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 16th, 2020 be approved as amended, and that the Council minutes of November 16th, 2020 and Special Council minutes of November 25th, 2020 be approved. All in favor? Yeah, can you get the hands again? It's hard to see it. That's carried. Thank you. Move to section number 13, bylaws. Need a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Sharp. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 20-89 to 20-91 inclusive, that be read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. Mover and seconder for second and third reading. Councillor Sharp, Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Sharp, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 20-89 to 20-91 inclusive read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, and that the mayor and town clerk do sign and seal the same, and rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? That's carried. And I will just start with the announcements. On December 3rd, I was happy to participate in the virtual lighting of our tree named Hope at Town Hall. That went very well, and many thanks to the Blessed Trinity Choir for their choral accoutrements. And on December 5th, the Holiday Hope for Food Drive and Reverse Parade was an amazing success. It was just, I was down there on Saturday evening, both at the PK Center and downtown, and just seeing everyone moving through town and all the lights down there. It was just amazing. I just want to give a big shout out to Parks Facilities and Fire Services teams for the Holiday of Hope Food Drive and the Reverse Parade. The response was just simply incredible. There was over 1,500 vehicles and probably many more. 550 boxes of food donated, which is over triple of the normal parade, and over $4,500 in monetary and gift card donations. And I just want to thank you, everyone in the town of Grimsby, for your community spirit, and it really gives us credibility that we're the #2 town in Canada, and hopefully this year we'll shoot for #1. Any other announcements? Councillor Cadwell?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jordan. Just a couple. I attended the GBF Wellness Hub on Monday, November 23rd at Different Strokes. I believe, well, I know you were there, and I believe Councillor Frake was there. That was a great event. The owners of the property have graciously donated the use of that property for the Grimsby Benevolent Fund, for their wellness hub. Great turnout, good group there, good speeches. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to Harley Valentine, who is involved with the people that own the building. And he's a Grimsby resident too, or was a Grimsby resident. Yeah, graduate of GSS. Also, I want to, just for the public, our celebration of lights, Christmas decorating contest has started today. And it's, again, you enter in on the town website. The entry deadline is December 14th. Judging will take place on December 15th to the 17th. And the winners will be announced on December 21st. I'm going to read the contest rules. All entries must have a Grimsby residence. Lights displays are encouraged to use LED lights. Entrants are not eligible to win prizes 2 consecutive years. I know some of the winners last year. They're set up again this year. I think they've spent their $100 very well on adding more Christmas lights. And I also want to say that this event is sponsored by Rona, Grimsby Rona, Century 21, Todd Fryer, real estate agent, and Canadian Tire have been the sponsors for, I believe this is our 14th year having the Christmas light celebration. So again, just driving around town and seeing a lot of people putting lights up already. It looks great. Just a huge shout out, big shout out to the residents of Kidd Avenue. They were on the video yesterday for the reverse parade. GSS High School had a nice Christmas decoration ornament, large ornament set up, and it showed the vehicles driving down Kidd Avenue. Went a little bit too fast, but you get a chance to get out and about. You got to check out Kidd Avenue. It looks great. So yeah, hopefully the contest goes well, and I think the energy will really be flying to it to people get involved. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Jordan. The countdown is on. You have 15 minutes to go and bid on your wreath with the Rotary Club Fantasy of Trees, and the wreaths that usually the museum holds a significant event with a whole bunch of trees and stuff. This year they've done it online. It closes at 10 o'clock tonight. They're trying to reach a goal of 10,000. They're at $2,600. I bid on one of those wreaths, and I'm in a bidding war back and forth, and I'm tied up in this meeting, so I'm hoping I still win my wreath that I've bid on. But anyone that's interested, there's 25 wreaths. They're beautiful, and 3 trees, I believe. So you've got 15 minutes to go vote, and I think that the Rotary would even be more appreciative if you can't get to vote on one of those wreaths or trees, that you still maybe consider making a donation to help them with meeting their target. So I just want to reach out and say that they're making a really great effort to try to support the community through this fundraising event. And if there's any way that people can get online and bid on those wreaths, please do so in the next 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Seeing no further announcements, I just want to, on a more somber note, just announce the passing of Miss Alfreda Jeffries at 99 years of age. She was a lifelong resident of the community and passed away earlier this week. So just that somber announcement. She was an amazing lady that lived in Grimsby for almost 100 years. Our next council meeting is scheduled for December 14th, 2020, following the Committee of the Whole. We're now going to move into closed session. So our regular portion, thank you very much and good night. I need a mover and seconder to move into closed. Okay. Councillor Frake and seconder, Councillor Bain. Just before we move into close, we need to read the electronic participation statement declaration. Good evening, members of council. Before we begin closed session, all members are reminded that any discussions in closed are to remain confidential as per our procedural bylaw and our code of conduct for the council of the town of Grimsby. Before we begin, I need each member that is attending electronically to confirm the following: that you understand that matters are to remain confidential, and to confirm no one else is present with you, and to confirm no one else can hear this closed session, and to confirm that you are not using any electronic devices other than your tablet or computer for the purposes of this video conferencing only, and to confirm that you are not recording this portion of the meeting. If you acknowledge all of the above, please reply with "I understand" and confirm to all of the statements. Councillor Bothwell,
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Dunstall,
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Frake,
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Cadwell,
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Ritchie,
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sharp, you're muted.
I understand, but I have a bunch of electronics here in my office that I'm not using them to record them, but I can't confirm to that portion.
Councillor Vane,
I understand and conform to the statement.
Councillor Vardy,
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
and myself, I understand and confirm to all the statements. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vane, resolved that council meet in closed session regarding the following. Under section 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or board employees. Under section 2392F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Status of the recommendations related to third-party investigation. All in favor to go into closed? That's carried. We are now into closed. Good night, everyone. Welcome back. We're now back in open session. Need a mover and seconder for the resolution of the confidential report TC 20-07. Councillor Ritchie moved. Seconder, Councillor Bain. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Bain. Resolved that confidential report TC 20-07 dated December 7th, 2020 from the closed session be received. All in favor? It's carried. Just need a mover and seconder for our confirming bylaw. Yeah. To be read a first time, Councillor Cadwell, Councillor Bain. Moved by Councillor Cadwell, second by Councillor Bain. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 20-92 inclusive, and that be read a first time. All in favor? It's carried. Mover and seconder for second and third reading. Mover Councillor Ritchie, seconder Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Ritchie, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws number 20-92 inclusive, read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, and the mayor and town clerk to sign and seal the same, and rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? It's carried. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone. Thank you.